Ever get that iffy feeling when you pull out leftovers? Like, is this still good? Well, imagine that, but on a scale of 46 people getting hit with food poisoning.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're diving into today.
Okay.
It all stems from a recent article out of FOX5DC about, well, a food poisoning situation that really rocked a seafood distributor in Maryland.
That's a good one. Seafood and food poisoning, those are two things you don't want to hear in the same sentence.
You got that right. And it brings up a ton of interesting angles, right? We're talking about food safety, especially in the workplace.
For sure.
I mean, there's so much to unpack there, like how we handle food and even the whole culture of sharing food at work.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of layers to this.
Definitely. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of this case.
Okay.
This all happened at NAFCO Wholesale Seafood Distributors. Yeah. NAFCO, yep. They're located in Jessup, Maryland, and here's the thing. They supply seafood products across the country. So there's a good chance you, dear listener, have eaten their fish at some point.
It's a good point. It makes you wonder, how widespread could something like this be?
Exactly. And that's what makes this deep dive even more important. It kind of touches everyone, right? From the distributor to us enjoying a meal at home.
That's true. Makes you think twice about where your food comes from.
For sure. So picture this, okay? It's a typical Monday, October 22nd, 2024, about 3:45 in the afternoon.
Okay.
Everything seems normal, and then bam, emergency responders are all over NAFCO's facility.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a major situation. 46 adults, all showing classic signs of food poisoning.
46? That's a lot of people. What happened?
I know, right? They even had to call in extra help from Anne Arundel and Baltimore counties just to handle the sheer number of people affected.
That's crazy. In a place like that, you'd think they'd have super strict food safety protocols. Makes you wonder, how did this even happen?
Right. And here's the twist. It wasn't any of NAFCO's products that caused the problem.
Really?
Nope. Turns out an employee brought in a homemade meal and, well, shared it with colleagues. And that, my friend, is what caused this whole mess.
So it wasn't the seafood itself. That's surprising. You'd think a seafood distributor would be the last place to have food poisoning from a home-cooked meal.
You would, wouldn't you? It just shows you, though, foodborne illnesses can happen anywhere.
Absolutely.
Even in places where you think they'd have all the regulations and everything in check.
It's a good reminder that we can't just rely on those systems. Individual choices matter, too.
Totally. Speaking of which, NAFCO did release a statement after everything went down, to kind of clear the air.
Right. What did they say?
They emphasized that their products, their actual seafood, meets all the highest safety standards. And, of course, that none of their products were involved in the incident.
That makes sense. They'd want to reassure people, especially if they distribute nationally.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a relief to hear that if you've ever bought their seafood,
Yeah, definitely. It highlights how crucial it is for companies to be transparent about these kinds of things.
No doubt. But you know what this really underscores? Individual responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when you're sharing food in the workplace.
It makes you realize that no matter how many rules and regulations are in place, one person's actions can still have a huge impact.
Absolutely. It's kind of like a chain reaction.
Exactly.
So, okay, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about food safety in general.
Okay, sounds good.
Without going into too much detail, what are the main culprits when it comes to food poisoning? What should people be aware of?
Well, the usual suspects are bacteria like Salmonella and E. coli,
Right. Those are the big ones you always hear about.
Exactly. And viruses like norovirus. These guys can really wreak havoc.
I've heard some horror stories about norovirus outbreaks.
Yeah, it's no joke. And the thing is, they all thrive in food that hasn't been handled properly.
Makes sense.
Like, if you leave food out at room temperature for too long, or you don't wash your hands well enough, or even using the same cutting board for raw meat and veggies, cross-contamination is a big issue.
Yeah, I've learned that the hard way a few times.
It happens to the best of us. But those little mistakes can really lead to the spread of these nasty pathogens. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. Well, we put so much trust in others when we share food.
That's true. I mean, usually you don't even think twice about taking a bite of something a coworker offers.
Right. It's like there's this assumption that everyone's following the same food safety rules.
Yeah, just as automatic trust. But this whole NAFCO thing really shows that's not always the case.
Definitely not. It's a good reminder to be cautious. So how can we be more aware, both individually and in workplaces?
That's the big question, right? What are the things people should be doing?
Well, it starts with the basics, washing your hands properly, making sure food is cooked to the right temperature, keeping raw meat separate from other ingredients.
Yeah, the simple things, but they make a huge difference.
Huge, but it goes beyond individual actions too, right? What about like regulations and stuff?
Oh, yeah, that's a whole other layer. We have all these systems in place like restaurant inspections and food labeling.
Right, exactly. And it's so important that those systems are enforced, that
Yeah.
they're actually working.
Absolutely. But what about the people on the receiving end? Like, if someone offers you food, what are the signs you should look out for?
That's a good point. It's always okay to ask about ingredients or how the food was prepared, especially if you have allergies or dietary restrictions.
Right. So basically, it's better to be safe than sorry, even if it's a little awkward to ask.
Exactly. You shouldn't hesitate to put your health first. And if something seems off, like maybe the food smells weird or looks undercooked, it's totally fine to politely decline.
Good advice. I think sometimes we feel obligated to eat whatever's offered, even if we have a bad feeling about it.
I know, right? It's like we don't want to offend anyone, but honestly, your health is more important.
For sure. This whole NAFCO incident is a good reminder that we all have a responsibility to keep our food safe. It's not just on the companies or the regulators.
That's so true. It's this complex dance between individual actions and workplace culture and societal norms, It's not just about one person or one company.
Yeah, it's all interconnected. So speaking of workplace culture, why do people even bring homemade food to work in the first place? I mean, it seems like there's a lot of potential for things to go wrong.
Yeah, you're right. There are risks, but there are also some really positive aspects to it, Think about it. Bringing in something you made yourself can be a great way to connect with colleagues.
Yeah, like a bonding thing. I guess I hadn't thought of it that way.
Right. It can build relationships, share cultural traditions. Food can be a way to express care and generosity.
That's a good point. It can definitely boost morale and create a sense of community.
Exactly. It's like saying, hey, I'm thinking of you guys. But of course, with that kind of generosity comes responsibility. You got to be extra mindful of food safety when you're preparing food for others.
Absolutely. Seems like there's this delicate balance, between those positive aspects and keeping everyone safe.
Oh, totally. And that's where communication is key. Whether you're bringing the food or accepting it, just be open about ingredients, potential allergens, any concerns you might have.
That makes sense. It's all about transparency.
Exactly. And this NAFCO case really highlights those unspoken expectations and responsibilities we have around food sharing.
Yeah, it's not something we think about consciously.
Right. It's like we just navigate these situations based on instinct and social cues.
But maybe this incident can help us be more deliberate, more thoughtful about how we approach food sharing, both at work and in our personal lives.
I think so. It's a good opportunity to reflect on our own habits.
For sure. This whole thing has made me realize how much we just automatically trust when someone offers us food. We assume they've taken all the precautions, but that's not always guaranteed.
And it's not just about trusting the person who made the food. It's also about trusting the systems in place, like the grocery stores, the restaurants, the suppliers.
Yeah. It's this whole web of trust.
Exactly. And this NAFCO case has really opened my eyes to how interconnected we are when it comes to food.
It's a complex web of individual actions, cultural norms, and regulatory systems. It's kind of mind-boggling when you think about it.
It really is. And it reminds us that even those everyday things like packing a lunch or grabbing a bite with colleagues can have far-reaching consequences.
Wow. So as we head into part 3, what's one question our listeners should be pondering? What should they be thinking about as they go about their day?
I think it's worth asking ourselves, how can we balance personal freedom with collective well-being when it comes to food? Where's the line between individual choice and the responsibility we have to keep each other safe?
It's crazy how one incident like this at NAFCO can spark so many thoughts.
I know, right? It really shows how interconnected we are.
It's true. Something happening at a seafood distributor in Maryland can impact, anyone who eats, really.
And that's a powerful takeaway, isn't it? It's not just about this one isolated event.
It's not. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one big thing you hope our listeners take away from all of this?
For me, it boils down to awareness and responsibility.
Okay, I like that.
Whether you're the one making the food or sharing a dish or even just, eating, we all have a role to play in food safety.
That makes sense.
It's about being mindful, informed, and proactive.
And not being afraid to have those sometimes awkward conversations,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like if you have a food allergy or if you're not sure how something was stored, speak up.
Yes. We often prioritize politeness over safety.
It's true.
But when it comes to food, it's really okay to be assertive and, look out for your own well-being.
I think this whole NAFCO situation has been a real wake-up call, at least for me. And I hope it's been eye-opening for our listeners, too.
Me too.
It's made me realize how even the most ordinary things, like packing a lunch or sharing a meal, can have consequences we don't expect.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that.
It is. And, it's a good reminder that we're all part of this larger food system.
Absolutely.
The choices we make, big or small, can impact not just ourselves, but others around us, too.
For sure. Our actions have ripple effects.
They do. So before we sign off, I have one final thought-provoking question for everyone listening.
Oh, I like these. Lay it on me.
Okay, so this NAFCO incident, it really highlighted that unspoken trust we have, when someone offers us food. But what are the unspoken rules and responsibilities we navigate in those situations? Where's the line between personal freedom and, well, the well-being of everyone involved?
That's such a great question. Food is so fundamental, and it's tied to so many social and cultural, even ethical ideas. It's definitely something to think about.
It is. And we would love to hear your thoughts. Share your experiences, your perspectives, maybe even your favorite food safety tips with us on social media. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay safe.
Bon appétit, everyone!